I'm Simon Martin. I'm from the same organisation as Simon James. One of the things we find quite confusing as a supplier, I'd be interested to get the panel's view on, is what would be more important to the panel if you were buying something, a buying solutions framework or a Pro 5 framework, and what's the future hold for buying solutions?
Okay, the future of buying solutions and the difference between buying solutions and Pro 5 frameworks. Who would like to pick that one up? Please.
It appears that buying solutions are being pushed more towards central governments. They haven't, I don't think they've said that overtly, but that seems to be the behavioural indicators. They used to have business development managers, and they were much more engaging with, from my point of view, local authorities, local government in what they were seeking, and that seems to have changed in the last 6-8 months. So they're potentially leaving a space for Pro 5, who themselves, from dialogues we've had, seem to be changing their approach as well, looking to return benefits back to the organisations that use them, whether that's through vouchers or discounts or whatever it is. The only answer I can really give to your question is I think every contract has to be taken on its own merits. We recently came to, we're doing a strategy for MFTs, multifunctional devices, printers and so on. And there were Pro 5 and buying solution frameworks available to look at, all of which were at a higher price than we're currently paying for our own. So after much thought, we thought, do we just buy off one of the frameworks now, or do we go to the market, and that's what we're currently doing. So in actual fact, because we're able to bring such volume as such a large organisation, potentially working in collaboration with other organisations in the West Midlands, we were able to commit significant volumes. So on that basis, they both, Pro 5 and buying solutions, don't tick the box of necessarily delivering best value. We end up with the cost of doing the procurement. We hope we'll end up with, and if there's anyone from the MFT suppliers here, I hope you'll compete effectively. I've seen some outside. Compete effectively to deliver that. So really, I think it's case by case, or maybe neither.
Mark wasn't from the Museum of London. If there are framework agreements in place, why would you then even start to compare those? And you would almost say, should these framework agreements be there in the first place, or they've already done the legwork? That's what they always taught me at school. Why compare them against each other again? Because you also find that on most framework agreements, it's the same set of 5 suppliers on there.
Okay, so why compare?
A lot of these framework contracts.
Sorry, Ken, can you get to the next?
A lot of these framework contracts have been put in for one reason alone, to basically circumnavigate the bureaucratic tendering process and streamline things. They are no more than lists, and in fact in many frameworks all you get is list prices. So it's not surprising that anyone, probably my daughter could probably actually get a better price than most framework contracts. They're meaningless. They have to be, we need a new generation of framework contracts which focus on guaranteed volumes, because that's what speeds the people. If a contractor sees the volume, I've been on the framework contract, you get a pound out of it. I mean, what's the point? But the other thing about it is, and I think one of the other men mentioned on customer service, it's all about having framework contracts, but unless you've got a desk officer there, a category specialist, and someone who can actually talk you through the programme, I'm having done some work with someone recently who did a mystery shopper exercise on a whole series of framework contracts, and to be honest with you, they were all useless. I mean, one of the people didn't actually know they had a framework contract in the first instance. Another one said, ring back in 4 weeks' time when so-and-so is back from holiday. I mean, come on, let's get real about these framework things. We're doing them for the wrong reason. And again, it's when people say, I'm going to do a framework contract, my heart sinks, because I say, why are you doing it? And they don't know, more often than not. So maybe a new way we look at the whole thing, and the way profile and buying solutions actually approach framework contracts. Okay, Eddie?
Yeah, I think Ken's absolutely right. I mean, if you actually go back and look to the European observation on frameworks, the Europeans actually think that frameworks should be used for 3 or 6 or 9 month fixes, not for taking a contract with 6 months left and slapping another 4 years to a supplier and giving them another 4-year contract. That's not the mentality the Europeans have to it. It's the mentality we have because we've done frameworks our way for far too long. But everybody else, the concept is 3 or 6 or 9 month fix till you put your own contract in place if you need it. So, you know, I think Ken's exactly right. We need a new generation of frameworks. We need something that's different.
Oh, sorry, please.
I think one thing to bear in mind, certainly for those people in the private sector, that the frameworks was a new concept to me in its execution within the public sector, coming from the private sector. And for me, it should be looked at on a business needs requirement basis, not on the fact that it simply existed. I know I've spoken to lots of suppliers, some of who are friends and still friends, because we talk about the fact that actually getting onto these frameworks is a very costly business. And then when they get there, they don't get any business. So, you know, for me, that can't carry on. It's frankly, you know, ridiculous to think that we can carry on that sort of basis. And therefore, when you look at it in the private sector, whereby you've got companies saying, actually, I'm looking at some sort of consortium arrangement, I'm looking at some synergy opportunities, that's a win-win for both us and the supply base, because we can get to volumes, or we can get to an infrastructure that makes sense, or they're the business decisions that need to be made. It shouldn't be made on the basis that we're just going through a process. And that, to me, is at the heart of the whole people issue around thinking through these things as business decisions, not as a process that needs to be followed. And that's where we are fundamentally missing a trick in terms of the profession as a whole, and it's something that we need to address as a profession.
Okay. Please,
to go back to the original question of Pro 5 versus buying solutions, I encourage schools, on part of education, I encourage schools to use frameworks, contracts available from any of those organisations, as that means professional buyers are letting the contracts, which is far better than people who should be teaching our children trying to let contracts. I can't say more than that because I'm running the competition between Pro 5 and buying solutions at the moment for future requirements for schools. But they're all good professional organisations. But frameworks aren't always a solution. I was on the team that led the first framework contracts in this country, and how they're being used now is often quite different. That was a way of getting fixed prices for ad hoc requirements in advance. Recently, and there's no reason why you can't under the regulations, and Eddie will agree with me, recently I've been letting contracts with scope for additional call-offs. So we know we need 500. We may well need some more in the future. We can get a really good price for that 500, and an agreement with the supplier that if we need more, they'll provide more at the same price. So frameworks aren't always a solution.
Okay, Simon, do you just want to finish that point?
Yeah, on the last bit on this, just from a supplier's perspective, frameworks are a double-edged sword. If you don't have a framework, it's very difficult to do business in some areas. If you do have a framework, you're not guaranteed to get any business because you're supposed to do a mini auction from the framework suppliers on it. So when the cost models are built within our business, especially, it's not necessarily you're going to get the best cost because of the double-edged sword nature of a framework. But to the point over here before about volumetric-driven numbers for future requirements, that probably will be a good route to go down in the future. From our perspective, as looking at how we cost things, because that will help drive volume through a contract to get you the best value for money, or the old term value for money.